Okay. Hey y'all, thank y'all for coming for the first session of Teachers Rescue Residency. As a reminder, like this month in general is going to be really revolved around the theme of generative somatics, or it's also considered or called somatic pedagogy. And so today I'm going to be giving an introduction to what somatic pedagogy is. It's was something that was a part of my senior thesis. So I don't know, I'm excited to share some of the research that I had. Hey, thank you for coming. Yeah, but I'm excited to share some of the research that I developed throughout my senior thesis, and then we'll do some light exercises and then have a talk. And I especially am excited and interested to talk about how somatics can be this tool or like this method to basically liberate us or emancipate us from, this violent hellscape that we live in. So without further ado, let's get into it. But I also forgot that I advertised these books and then didn't give it to y'all. Let me do that. And I'm also, I hope I don't mean to hype them up, but they're just regular notebooks. But I just thought that would be, if y'all wanted them. Yeah, I can pick a color. I'll leave them here. Hi. Feel free to come on in. So yeah, I'm just going to be sharing what I hope will be as brief as possible, little presentation as an introduction to somatic pedagogy. Then we'll do like a brief session, like an exercise, and then we'll talk about, it's reflecting on what I have to share basically. And I wanted this to be the kickoff so that we can continue the theme of like somatic healing throughout the month of October. So, and also into November when we do somatic art making. So yeah. Oh yeah. As a reminder, I think everyone here is from the residency. So these are the public events that are happening in October. I have at the end of this slide, though, all of the programming specifically for the cohort. So just as a reminder, next week, oh, sorry, I had to orient myself. Next week is a session at the studio. It'll also be virtual too. And I think that one really, is going to work really well hybrid, I think. So no worries if it's like we all want to tune in virtually. And then the following week, we have a session on Monday, not Wednesday, with Angel Edwards. And I'm so excited for that. That should be really cool. So yeah. So yeah, let me get into we often in general think of, when we think about like a body, our individual bodies, that's what we usually think of. We think of like a body we can touch. We might also even think of like bodies of water or maybe like a body of work when we're thinking of it like linguistically. But somatic practitioners and thinkers like Moshe Feldenkrais and Roberto Freire, they have understandings of the body that extend beyond just our physical form and our individual understandings of the body. They believe and argue that our environment can be considered a body. Our social networks can be considered a body. A group of people can be considered a collective body. Our bodies, as they argue, are as much outside itself as it is inside itself, webbed in their relations until ultimately such firm distinctions cease to matter. We are all intrinsically connected with each other in those like webs of relations, and connected to not even just each other, but also other species and forms of life, and even connected to our environment. And this is because each aspect of our civilization and ecosystem affects and influences each other like greatly. And these systems of connections is what somatic philosophers argue make up a larger body. So essentially, like how we individually have these like systems in our body, our systems of connections make a larger body between each other. An example of this in a practical sense is like when we eat produce from the soil that is rotted and unhealthy, we become unhealthy and sick. So there's this apparent cycle of conversion of relations between us and the environment we live in. And inevitably it's the cycle where we affect the world we live in, and the world we live in affects us deeply. We are both products of our environment, and we are our environments personified. Moreover, because of this connection, our environment influences our habits, our aspirations, and our overall quality of life. And it also influences, and then our actions also reciprocally influences the quality of the environment. So like understanding or even visualizing, conceptualizing the larger collective body might be something that's like hard to do. It might be something like in general, like recognizing our mutually effective relationship between our individual bodies and our environments and like in our community. You know, like recognizing how we are part of a collective body might deeply contradict with the reality we participate in today, like in every day. That's because right now we live in this time of late stage capitalism in America, this time in the state of the world where things feel precarious, where resources feel really limited. And I think more now than ever, especially in like this time that we live in right now, especially with like our generation, we are convinced to believe that it's really like every man for himself. And that we also, with that belief, or are convinced to believe that, you know, one's individual's actions doesn't affect the livelihood of others. It doesn't affect one's community or one's environment. But that limiting individualist understanding of the body that we have and that we have to like hold on to survive doesn't really benefit us or make surviving easier. The only thing it really benefits is the system we live in to keep it continuing on. It encourages people to care less about the suffering of others. It encourages people to suffer in silence instead of asking for help and advocating for themselves. We're so busy and worried about our own livelihoods as individuals, we don't realize how much we thrive when united and when acknowledging that connection, that intrinsic connection that we have with each other. We navigate the world as individuals, assuming that we have no influence in the world. But I and other Somatic philosophers argue that our daily actions affect those around us greatly. It affects our social environment, our social collective body greatly. And so when our actions reflect that of healing, reflect that of collective care, and when we acknowledge that we are all one and we are all intrinsically connected, those actions influence those around you, whether it be like the people you see on the bus. You know, I think of commute a lot, but like even just with us right now convening, it influences our social environment and influences our collective body. So also, in addition to living in like this individualist, capitalist environment, we also live in a violently racist and a violently othering environment. And the systemic traumas that we experience on a regular day basis, and even also the traumas that our ancestors experience, have a great influence on how we act and how we act towards each other and act towards ourselves. As we went over, we are our environments personified. So living in a violent and exploitative capitalist and racist environment, we embody the violence of our system in many ways without noticing. And I think adverse examples of this that we see in our community, especially in Philly today, is like gun violence, sexual assault and harm, and even things like projected, internalized homophobia and anti-Blackness. Many of us, without noticing, without intention, enact the harm that isn't part of our environment. And this like understanding, of course, doesn't rationalize the harm that people cause, but it instead gives us insight on how the collective body and the environment body works. How when we exist in an environment, we embody the qualities and the aspects of the environment without intention. We are one of the, I guess, most inspiring quotes when I was initially like doing this research was on Somatic like page, I think it was generativesomatics.com, like one of their introductory pages. They said that we are always practicing something, and what we practice becomes embodied. We act it out automatically. So to make sustainable shifts in our behavior and the ways of thinking, we need to intentionally embody new behaviors. We have to intentionally incorporate healing practices in our lives specifically group healing practices, like collective healing practices, to encourage new healing habits, healing responses, and to discourage us from harmful actions and harmful responses. And this is also like deeply important when you think of it in relation to envisioning utopia. While we're thinking of how we can live outside of the dystopia we live in, practices focused on the body will help us avoid acting and making decisions from traumas experienced from systemic harm. It'll make us make intentional decisions and actions and responses that aren't influenced by capitalism. We will instead make decisions based off the environment we aspire to live in, which I argue, because of the conversion of relations and connection, will ultimately reform the environments we live in to like the envisioned utopia we aspire to see. So like, to I guess reiterate, like right now we live in a harmful environment. And so we in turn embody that harm. So consistently engaging in healing practices will encourage a healing social environment. It is, as I mentioned before, that influence and effect that we have on each other. So when we choose to embody healing, that love will affect others and spread like a medicine to cure a virus. We have to practice developing a deeper relationship with our bodies and establish what a utopian collective body would look like, even on an individual level, to establish what a utopian individual body would look like, and also what a utopian community body would look like. All of these ideas and understandings are the thoughts and focuses of somatic pedagogy specifically. The practice of somatic pedagogy specifically was founded by Roberto Freire, and he was also too like one of the really cool things. Not even cool, but his story was really just crazy. Like he was from Brazil, and he was basically a part of like a resistance movement in Brazil against the dictatorship in there, and he was in like prisons a lot and was physically like harmed by the police that were there a lot. And through those experiences, he was inspired to essentially form this process of healing that encourages people to exist and think outside of capitalism and outside of the systemic harm that we exist in right now. It's really also considered like a therapy for the oppressed. It's very like rooted in anarchism and Black and brown liberation, which I'm really interested and inspired by, I think. In general, I want to leave like with the focus of like, we cannot just say and express interest in a revolution or a liberation from our violent environment. We have to consistently follow through with actions that reflects what we aspire to achieve. And I would hope that our aspirations are more than just fighting against the state, but also establishing support and care for ourselves and each other. Support and care we don't have access to in a capitalist state. So I'm going to give a bit of an overview of, I guess, this understanding from more of a biological perspective, to give some visuals of what I say, like we're going to build a bodily relationship with our trauma, like what that means, what that looks like. Primarily, we will be like engaging with the nervous system, specifically the vagus nerve system. And you might have heard this phrase before, like from people like to calm your nervous system and to soothe it. And that's when they're talking about the nervous system in general, they're pretty much talking about this system specifically. Because it's like the longest and most complex system of nerves in our body. And it connects our brainstem to our lungs, our stomach, our throat, our liver, our spleen, our heart, our pancreas, and our kidneys. So it's really huge, and it connects to so many different facets of our body, and like organs that help us function throughout the day. It's a big part of our parasympathetic nervous system, which regulates digestion and regulates the regulation of experience and bodily functions. It's responsible for sending information to our brain based off what is sensed by the nerves. We often understand emotions and impulses as something that the brain sends signals for us to do, when in reality, a lot of times our nervous system, especially the vagus nerve system, sends us sensations to different parts of our body and those different organs that I mentioned. And it is through those sensations that we sometimes have this like urge to respond in a certain way, or we notice a different sensation or feeling from that experience. More than anything, our vagus soul nerve system is spreading information on what is unsafe based on what our limbic system in our brain, or like commonly referred to as like our lizard brain, perceives as safe or unsafe. So, and that discernment of like what is unsafe or safe can be conditioned through routine practice or even over generations. Whether we're conscious of it or not, every day we trained our nerves and our bodies to respond to engagements or experiences in certain ways that helps us cope and survive. And even further, our parents passes down ways in which they taught their nervous systems and their bodies to regulate pain or respond to any kind of experience. And even further, we teach each other how to respond to sensations or experiences, and we adopt those mechanisms too. And I think that like sharing of knowledge, especially the intergenerational one, is like a really great example of how we are all like intrinsically connected, you know? Some may have, especially when it comes to like regulating the body in response to systemic harm, some people might have a relationship with their body or a relationship with their vagus nerve system where it gets easily inflamed and triggered from things that you logically might not perceive as unsafe, but your limbic system does. Or you might also find yourself with a nervous system that is like really desensitized, where your body doesn't respond to harm at all. You might completely disassociate or freeze when experiencing or witnessing something traumatic. There are many ways that our body responds to witnessing harm and experiencing traumatic events, but either way, like no matter what way your body responds, this was something that was taught and influenced. Basically, it was from like an influence of someone else. And you were taught essentially through like conditioning how to internalize traumatic events. All of this, whether or not we are mentally aware of it, our body remembers, not only as muscle memory, but through familiar responses to the nerves. But in contrast, building a strong connection with our bodies and our soul nerves, where we honor and soothe our body, will encourage us to better discern where our trauma experience from systemic harm is internalized within our bodies. So when you build a connection with this nervous system and even your body in general, you'll be able to basically be in the driver's seat and determine what is unsafe and what is safe, and determine how you want to respond to it instead of having your responses be out of trauma, those like traumatic experiences. And so, yeah, and so this knowledge offers us the resilience to choose to respond and act in healing ways. And so with this knowledge and understanding, we have the agency and knowledge and skill set to really embody a utopia. I'll also just say too, like, this is kind of like a general understanding of the nervous system and kind of like our bodies in general. So like take this as like I guess like a grain of salt, because like our bodies are so complex, it's like actually ridiculous. So, but this is still true and like something that can be used, but definitely doesn't fully encompass everything. So at this point, you might be wondering, like, so you have the understanding and like the maybe even the visuals of the nervous system and how it works and how it responds to things. But how do you tangibly like build that relationship? These independent practices will create a foundation for developing a deeper relationship with your body and even also the social bodies that you're a part of. And then also just to let you know, I will be sharing this afterwards, so y'all can like screenshot and keep this too. But all of these exercises were also pulled from one of the first books that I read about somatic healing, My Grandmother's Hands by Risma Menakem. And they're really, really helpful. They like, when he said foundation, they were really like this foundation for me. So I highly recommend doing these. There's a few that I have for independent exercises. And I'll just say a few more notes, like when it comes to, I guess, going on healing journeys or even within like the healing journeys that you might even be in process in right now. I want to just like offer a few suggestions and notes, especially when it comes from healing from a non-capitalist perspective. The main thing I think being that I want to emphasize, especially in our upcoming sessions, is like avoid trying to find an end goal with your healing or trying to fix your trauma. Your traumatic experiences and the pain that you might have experienced in the past will never go away or be absolved from healing. But what will change is our capacity to respond to it, our ability to act out of love instead of acting out of trauma. There was this one person that said it one time really well, where it's like you're not necessarily shrinking your trauma, but you're growing bigger than it through healing. I also want to encourage all of us to avoid trying to understand this process, especially somatic pedagogy, from a logical perspective. Because, like, when you think about it, even too, like, when people act out of trauma, it's never logical. It's always like ridiculous. Like, we usually respond in shock, usually, because it's not a logical thing. And so processing trauma, again, too, isn't necessarily like this logical thing. Even like, I also want to, I guess, say that out and throw that out there too, because you might come across like frustration trying to like articulate your feelings and thoughts, but sometimes like language doesn't fully like capture everything. So if language or words isn't fully like reaching what you need to communicate, then I'm hoping that with the exercises we do when we're like creating art, that it might. But also too, just allow it to be something that you digest to yourself. It might not necessarily have to be something that you like verbally communicate. And one other note, I encourage us all to like let these explorations in these sessions be like really silly and fun and awkward, because learning to live outside of a capitalist body is like awkward and different. The awkwardness is really just us collectively developing a deeper level of vulnerability and like genuineness with each other and ourselves. So yeah, it's gonna be weird, like weird movements, maybe even weird like exhales, but it's gonna be fun, y'all. And also with the independent sessions or the independent exercises, I recommend trying these, and also the writer that I got these from recommends trying these exercises once a day, because this will really allow you to have a deep relationship with your vagus nerve system, and allow you to like have that skill set to soothe yourself whenever you're in an intense situation, and combat repressing like your bodily experiences. And I guess with that too, like, I don't know, I was pretty intimidated by the idea of doing something like that every day, like meditating, but one of the things that I came to conclusion when I was actually meditating was like, if you can make time for capitalism, then you can make time to be present in your body and to like heal. Or not even heal, but like engage in healing practices, but you know what I mean. And then also, I guess the last thing I'll leave on is like, feel free to always alter every exercise to whatever way and capacity you want to. One of my favorite things about somatic pedagogy is like the emphasis on celebrating difference, and like how we do not all need the same thing, and not every session is going to resonate. And so feel free to have the agency and like I guess the agency is the word, to like be like, this isn't working for me, but maybe there's some other way that it can be, or maybe even in general, like there might be an exercise that might not work as well for you, and that's completely okay. But I guess with that too, like I encourage y'all to be open and try at first. But yeah, so these are some more examples of independent practices, and again, I'll have this at a later date, like I'll throw it in the Discord and also in the email so we can have it. And I'll have my notes in there too. So, but yeah, these are more independent practices. I'm trying to think of what my favorite ones are. Oh, I love rubbing my belly. Humming is a really good one too, especially if you're like into singing. I recommend
using like step-by-step instructions for yoga.
Yeah, pretty much. Someone actually earlier today, they weren't able to attend, so they sent like some notes, and basically this one exercise they did, it was Tai Chi, and I was like, it's all, yeah, like it's all the same. Like so these are some exercises that you might not necessarily do every day, but you can do if you want to explore your body a little deeper, or you can do in response to like experiencing something intense. And, you know, if you want to practice processing what you just experienced on a bodily level. And when I say intense, it doesn't even have to be like super adversely violent, but like if you just had an argument with a friend or something, like this is a good way to like level yourself and ground yourself. So you can, even if you want to revisit the argument, like come back and not respond from like your trauma, if that makes sense. So these are some of those. And these are kind of like more longer. I think they take more like 15 minutes, when the other ones, like you can kind of make whatever time you want. And so lastly, these are some practices that will establish a deeper connection with your community members, and are things that you can do in a group or with family. This is also something that can help develop a deeper relationship or a deeper sense of compassion and understanding with like the people that you deal with, which is fun. I also want to like emphasize and recognize too that like, I don't know, I think a lot of people talk about, especially within the Black community, like generational curses, but like we also have like a lot of generational gifts that are passed down from family member to family member. And when I say gifts, I mean like methods of resilience and methods of soothing and taking care of each other and taking care of ourselves culturally, that soothe the nervous system. So like singing together. I get, I don't know if there is listed on here, but like even doing stuff like doing people's hair, like all of that stuff and these practices culturally have like that significance and healing too. We have those like powers too. So maybe even too, one thing that you might want to inquire about is like thinking of different routine practices that you used to engage in as a kid with your family and what used to like deeply soothe you. Whether it be like hearing your mom sing while she was cooking or something like that. Um, and I just leave on one final note before we. I also want to do one of these exercises together since we're here together in group. So that was fun. But before that, one final note I want to leave on is just like, just as our body stores trauma, we can teach our body to store revolutionary practices, healing practices, and to store self and community compassion. This is all especially crucial for Black and Brown people, even Black and Brown queer people too, who experience harm the most. This process did not have to be entirely exhaustive, like the road to liberation, even too, or the road to like establishing a revolutionary community doesn't have to be exhaustive. The structure of working together and relying on each other and healing work creates the pleasure that we lack in this exploitative environment. Our utopia is like an immersion of pleasure and abundance. So of course, these practices are going to be fun, joyous, silly, and pleasure-based. So now, without further ado, we're going to do an exercise. Stop share. And yeah, I'm gonna keep it on the screen in case y'all want to talk, so then it can be kind of like we're in a circle. Okay, cool. Now I need my notes so I can die. I forgot about that word.
So you were talking about how the body doesn't react logically to its trauma. It reminded me of this tweet that I just saw before I walked in here, and it was talking about how like researchers have basically said that the universe is more like a hologram than like a physical structure, and how like people have the ability to manifest things if they want. And basically how the brain is also its own body, but that it made sense to me, but not logically, if that makes sense. So I thought about that when you said that like bodies react illogically.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like, and I think like sensual knowledge and non-logical forms of knowledge are just as important and teach you just as much, maybe even low-key more than like the Western understandings of like and limiting understandings of what knowledge is. Thank you for that. Yeah. But also I definitely want to leave room to talk and stuff post, but let's get into a session. I think, would y'all want to hum together? I think that would be nice. Okay. We're gonna do it. We're gonna take 2 deep exhales, and then on the third exhale, we'll hum together. So you can put your hand on your heart, your tummy, or wherever feels most comfortable. You can also close your eyes. So now we're going to take a deep inhale. And release on an exhale when you're ready. Then rest in between inhales and exhales. But inhale again when you're ready. Letting all the air enter your diaphragm and lungs. And you can release on an exhale when you're ready. And so now on this third exhale, we're going to hum together. So I hope y'all ready. All right, let's inhale. And hum on an exhale when you're ready. Let's do one more. So let's inhale whenever you're ready. And release on an exhale. I kind of want to do one more. It's inhale. If whoever wants to continue. One last good humming exhale. Your eyes are moving. All right, Joe. So I don't have any particular prompted questions for today, but I guess in general, I wanted to have a free form conversation post, mini exercise and also post my presentation. But yeah, how are you guys feeling post exercise?
It reminds me of I have a lot of anxiety, and so earlier this year I started taking singing classes to help, and a lot of it was because I was like, "Wow, I think this will really help me with breath work." And this was exactly what my singing teacher had me doing. It was like, "Listen, you're in the shower." I was like, "Okay." So this was nice to like. This is very common.
Yeah, I feel that on the anxiety part. Like, I was feeling myself shaking as I was exhaling, and like the more we did it though, the more I felt stronger.
Whenever I breathe deeply, like intentionally, I think about how when I first started my yoga practice, like a year ago. And so in class, we would be doing poses. And like the part you said about making exercises your own, I wasn't doing that in yoga. So when I would breathe, when he said to breathe, and if he said to hold the pose or hold the breath, I would hold it. And so I didn't realize like how uncomfortable I was because I wasn't like really acting how I needed to act. And so one class, he just started saying like, breathe when you need to. And he started saying it more. And so I just started to do that more. And I noticed that if I'm like really anxious or just in a moment where I feel unsafe, the first thing I stop doing is breathing. So just doing that exercise made me like really relax.
Where yeah, I definitely like I feel like one of the things I love when with any like routine practice, like even with yoga too, is that basically always when you find yourself in states of stress, you will have the skill set to quickly just go straight to it. And it's so wild, like I guess processing or like reflecting on not having that skill set versus having it, and like how much easier essentially it is to like navigate life and not have like your life be determined by like anxiety, basically. You know what I mean? Like, well, for me personally, I know that's how I feel.
Yeah, I don't know if any of y'all also lived in dorms undergrad. But when I left, mental health, woo! Like, again, because of like just like so many environmental things, being able to like have more control over my space, being able to like not have it invaded all the time.
Yeah. It's true. Yeah, I definitely felt unsafe when I was on campus just because like public safety can do whatever they want. But also like I was an RA and I had a cat that I wasn't supposed to have. I used to smoke in my room. I used to be doing shit that I wasn't supposed to be doing, so I would have all this anxiety and I never felt safe in my space. Cause like at any moment somebody could just like come in. And so now that I'm not living on campus anymore, I feel like I can just really do what I want to do and not have to think about not getting caught or what's going to be the repercussions of me doing this.
That's such a good point too, because like I feel like basically surveillance itself has like this specific form of like repression that we internalize. Like I don't know, because post being in school, even like also like yes with the surveillance, but even too on a level of like how intense work intensive school is. Like I felt tense in my body. I even feel it still now because I low-key feel like in some ways my body still thinks that I'm supposed to be in school again. And so I've just been trying to like whenever I feel myself tense enough or like I have to be on 10, like I'm like, wait, I don't have to be like that. You know what I mean? Like
I hold my stress a lot in my face, and so like a lot of the times my jaw will be super clenched, and I won't notice until like my mouth is dropping, or I'll like clench my shoulders. But when I'm like in those positions, I feel super heavy, and so when I breathe, it reminds me to like let my body go and stop like holding it so tightly.
does anyone else have like spaces within their body that they like can cite as like, oh, this is where I locate stress?
I think my back sometimes. I think it's just like tiring. A lot of the time, I was just thinking about high pressure maintenance thing. I think it's like performing all the time. Spaces never feel right. You're comfortable being watched, everything. So I think like constantly training this posture, like even like my body feels like sort of loose. So yeah.
Do you get people telling you to like stand up straight a lot?
Yeah, or like I'm always like type earlier, like how I'm like being perceived, I guess, like body language. That's a big for me. I do that a lot at work. I feel like I have like another persona, and then when I come home, I just like take off all my mask. Yeah. But I basically pretend to be a more refined person than I naturally am, and so I feel like I have to like act like play this part. And it drains a lot of my energy. Yeah. I think the performance, I guess, for work at me is like I think people seeing me in a certain way. Maybe like I guess like seeing like more like a woman, but I don't identify as a woman. So it's like it stresses me out a lot.
I feel that like I don't know. I would love to see or read about like the somatic practice specifically for like the queer and like non-binary like trans experience because I'm essentially more so familiar with it from like Reese Momenicam and like some other people that talk about like in relation to capitalism and race, but it is really something like even also too from like a feminine like women experience, like this consistent like performance that we have to like uphold that's so exhaustive. Like, yeah.
When I think about my gender and like identifying as a woman, I always like come to this consensus that or I'm grappling like is my womanhood like all of the performances and I'm keeping up to like be a good enough woman. And when I ask myself like why am I a woman, like what makes me a woman, I don't have any like legit good answer. And the one that I can come up with is I don't do it for me. I do it like for safety or like reassurance or just like the ease of interacting with people.
Yeah. I really appreciate that too. That's something I think we could even like possibly explore like more, because I don't know, y'all bringing up stuff that like I don't know. It's also like we really got it like so hard. We be experiencing so many mundane traumas that it's like a can of worms and like such a wide field of shit that we can. But no, I really appreciate that, and I would love to consider like a exercise or some workshop that could provide us some healing from that, or even like a space of respite from the bullshit, like at the very least.
What's been your guys' comfort food this, I guess, this week or something?
Oh,
Thanks.
Yeah.
Wings.
Mm.
Yeah. Thinking that we have a lot of life reasons.
Wings
I
definitely.
did those wings too, they just.
Yeah, right. I don't know what it is about the fall, or maybe it's like the time of year.
Mm.
That's right, then you Ethiopian chicken spot on Baltimore, maybe you would make that movie.
Ooh, I gotta check that joint out.
Yeah.
It's run by the same people who do Edit Cafe.
Okay.
So they opened the chicken spot, and I was like, the woman who runs Edit Cafe opened a restaurant then. I was like, so I think even like when we think about what spaces make us feel like environmentally safe, like even thinking about like where, well, even like what happens like to work, and like I did for me, I'm like, that's my place. Like, you know, I'm like, why would I move? I like the auntie. Like I say hi to her when she's doing something outside. Like, there's a bidet in the bathroom. I'm like,
Yeah.
you can't get me out of here. So,
No, that's so important too, because like things that remind us of like safe spaces growing up and like culturally, I think is like really significant and important. Like I think that's why I was super, super hyped to do these sessions, like primarily here, just because, especially Paul Robeson was just like this really badass activist, along with all the other amazing things that he did in his lifetime. So I don't know, I love being here. It feels like I'm in my grandparents' house.
Right.
Yeah.
It reminds me of the Mary Anderson.
Yes, yeah.
Working out so when I came here.
and they're fundraising. I think they're
Word.
fundraising for renovations or something like that. I don't know.
I know that Tanner House is too.
Yeah, seems like it's the time of year, I guess.
Yeah.
In the mornings, when I go into work, it's a middle school, and so the smell of it reminds me of like preschool, like aftercare, like it's like a rubbery, bright smell out the house. And so like, when it smells like that on those days, I just feel like better.
Where yeah, sensual soothing is like really important too. I've been trying to do that more. Like in my room, I set up more cool lights that like calm me down, especially when I'm hot. I'll be like, yo, this is
Yeah.
my vibe right now.
That's me right now.
Right. Yeah, no, this is give them like somebody auntie house or something. Like, yeah. I think one of the cool things about like in general with these remembrances is like when we consciously think of them and like are consciously reminded of them, that really amplifies the healing and the soothing. So I don't know, sometimes when I think of it or even like subconsciously, like I'm like, this reminds me of something, I kind of say it out loud to like really bring it to the forefront of my mind. Which I don't know, it might be something helpful or like basically it might do the same effect to y'all. Like
Yeah, I really liked when you brought up, like generational gifts as well as generational traumas. That's for me, I'm trying really hard to think about how to reclaim a lot of things that I grew up with where I'm like, well, I don't like some of what was given to me with this, but I really like this part. And a big part of that for me has been like scent. And that was something I was hoping to like explore more in the residency. Because I realized so much of how I calm down or feel stressed out or like move through my day is entirely shaped through my beliefs. So I was like, when I figured this out, my mind was blown. And now like it's like the summer routine involves like scents during certain parts of the day. Now my fall routine, I burn incense at different parts of the day, and it made such huge difference. And I was maybe
I feel that way about like perfumes and lotion. Like I associate a perfume with like a different activity, and so then when I use it, I feel like I have a superhero cape on or something.
Yes. That's so good. I love that. So we got foods and we got sex.
I heard that like sense memory is actually the like one out of all your senses that's most activated. Like when you do smell something, like is more likely to take you back to an experience or a memory. Overall your other senses, which I think is really interesting. I didn't know that. Until like a couple of years ago, and it does. Like I noticed since learning that fact that when I smell certain things, oh my god, this smells like my grandmother's house, and like it just takes me there. Or oh my god, I'm on fire, and remember camping, you know, and it just takes me there. And it adds like a certain level of like serendipitous comfort to like my day when I spontaneously smell something that reminds me of like some good memory. So I also agree. I would like really love to explore that.
Yeah, a big also component of like somatic experiencing is really like taking in the sensations from good, pleasant memories and using that as a method to calm. So like that definitely like coincides where we can use the senses to like really like transport ourselves.
Right.
Honestly, like if I'm being real, like I fully believe that we can like travel through time, but specifically through like our previous experiences. And I think that is a method. And so yeah, I would love to basically time travel with your own
Right.
some previous like experiences and come back and be like, I remember this, I remember that. That would be cool.
Is your bathroom?
That's a really good question.
I feel like maybe it's not, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, this building is interesting because it's two sides. I think it's kind of here though. Let me see what it is.
Yeah, maybe that's.
Did they get water?
Yeah, it's one here.
Oh, okay.
And I was trying to think of, because we were naming all this, all the senses, but I don't think we touched like hearing. And so I was trying to think of ways that like I relate to my memories based on what I hear. And I have one song by 21 Savage that just was associated to a really bad memory for me. And so for the longest time, I hated 21 Savage, and I only knew that one song. And then like years later, once I like, I don't know, just got more comfortable and just like grew from that bad experience, I was able to listen to 21 Savage and enjoy him. But every time I would hear that song, it would just like take me there.
Word. Yeah, no, sound is so, I feel like for me, sound is one of the most prevalent just because I grew up and music was a big part of my No, yo, I definitely him when he featured too, he be rapping like the right dude, like but yeah, music was such a part of my childhood growing up. So I like when I'm processing and like I'm a Scorpio, like very water dominant. So I be crying a lot. So like I'll use songs to like cry through, and then after the song's over, I'm fully like just like soothed, like fully. Yeah.
I really like either like either such a story. I think like I mean people expect me. I don't like people are obsessed with like names and everything, but I feel like that's just like so much fun. Like you get moments like this, just like I will like honestly.
Oh yeah, please do.
Like I'm really just love like mixing around and like I would collect songs with me and my friend. We're like trying to like learn how to do mixes and stuff.
Word.
Yeah.
Yo, I would absolutely love that. One of the things that two people did in the pilot iteration of this project was they did playlists. So I would love to continue the tradition if you want to throw down. And we can have a listening party.
Okay.
So,
There you go.
yeah, that would be
My girlfriend ordered like this DJ, like mini DJ, mixing thing from Amazon. And we do a party and then like extra like DJ and like hit it with the
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I don't think I want it. I think I probably have like, it's like literally like baby's first like turntables like.
Yeah, that also reminds me, I'm super hyped for the dance workshop. I think also too, just because we didn't do it last year, so to do it again, like with that component, I think is gonna be like real lit, so.
One of my biggest fears is dancing publicly. Like it was irrational,
Same.
like I just wouldn't move. And some of I still don't. Like if I want to do a little like two-step, I will, but I gotta be lit mostly. I just don't feel comfortable with people watching me dance. So and my girlfriend and my brother, we all went to the same college, and they love dancing. Like they're really good dancers, and so my school had a yearly like dance show, and it was like huge. It's called Orchesis, and so all like 3 of my college years in college, they would participate in like choreography. And they were trying to get me to do it. So my last year, I finally did it. And I felt so much better because I felt like I unlocked like a different level of myself.
Yeah,
But it gave me like an enormous amount of confidence just to know that I can do it if I wanted to.
yeah,
But it felt like very freeing because I had like never danced publicly in my life.
yeah. No, that resonated with me a lot. And then also too, like, I basically whenever I'm dancing and I'm lit, I be thinking about how like I'm also right now I'm dancing and then I'm also the child that would never dance at the
Yeah.
same time. And how that's like I feel like that's a huge example of us growing bigger than like our experiences that discouraged us from doing certain things or responding to certain things in certain ways. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm thinking a lot about, like, I think sometimes there's a stereotype that like you get of like, oh, you can only learn things when you're younger, and you can only change when you're younger, and like, once you pass 25, that's it. You can't learn no more. And like, I'm thinking of my parents in particular and how they get into this mindset of like, oh, the lives are over, I can't change no more. And I'm like, actually, like, it's so great to me, at least, to be rediscovering so many parts of like small Aviza, and to see even like older women who were so inspiring to me when they were doing that. Yeah, so just realizing that like we can do this tapping in at like any age, and it's not just like you can be in the college and be like, you know what, little dance. So,
Yeah, y'all. Just on some like final note, I'll just say thank y'all for like this first session. I definitely wanted it to be like getting to know each other. But yeah, I'm excited for the next few exercises. We'll still be more guided. And you'll probably come to find in these next few weeks, especially when I'm guiding, they're like really lax. But I hope they still end up being like these fruitful, impactful sessions. I'm excited for next week.
Is it remote or is it?
That will be at the collective studio,
Okay.
but virtual. And in general, like, I think what would be helpful for me is just to know, like, in advance if folks are tuning in virtual, because then I'll just stay home. And then we can do it from home.
Right.
But yeah, that one is either cool either or. Our studio is kind of cozy now because we got a couch, so y'all could come through. But yeah, and I'll just say, as like some things I wanted to like leave thinking of is one, thinking of like the connection, the interconnectedness we have with each other. I want to like encourage all of y'all, if y'all already don't like have like an established connection with the people in your neighborhood, to like go up to your neighbors and be like, hey, what's your name? My name's so and so. Because I feel like that is one of the tangible ways of like building a connection, conscious connection to our collective body. Or even just the people that you see that you commute with a lot and their familiar face. Like, be the weirdo to be like, hey, what's up? Or don't, but if you do, let me know how it goes. I would love to hear your stories. And I promise to do it too. So I'm not the only one, because I'm honestly bad at talking to people. It's like,
I still did a little bit with a person who lived in my apartment. And it was great because now we get to trade tips on how to decorate our tiny little kitchenettes.
yes.
And I think the next person should be my next door neighbor
Mm.
because I owe him one. Because I had to do it before it got cold. A mouse found its way into her. And I was chasing it out. And he stepped out of he was on the fire escape, so I can enjoy it. And he stepped out and he killed his mouse by stomping on it in slides.
Oh my
I
god.
was like, I owe you.
And that's like a conversation starter. Like, remember when you killed that mouse?
I was amazed. I was shocked. I'm still shocked. So, I think definitely next to thank you for killing the mouse. So
Can I tell you another mouse story? Yeah, crazy. When I was so my mom grew up with her grandson telling her that if you found a mouse in your house and you let it go, it would just come back.
Yes.
So they had to kill it. So my mom would get the mice on the tray, put the tray in a plastic bag, and tie it up and smashed the mouse.
No.
Against the
Oh
wall,
my God.
Damn.
Yeah, that's like,
It was like very few things unsettled me.
Wow.
Right.
That.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, on that note.
But on the lighter note, I don't know if y'all saw, but Carisha went live one time and she was just telling a story about how she put the bus with this woman every day, like to work, and she didn't know her, she was like a random person, but and one time, like she got off the bus and started fighting somebody, like the person that she got on my face. And so she got off the bus and she helped them fight too. And she was saying, like, I wasn't gonna let her fight alone, like we ride the bus together.
Yeah, no, yo, I love that. Yo, like when we talk about Somatic, when we talk about like community.
But I understand her, like, I think I might throw something. I might
Yeah.
have nothing, but I might throw something.
Or I'm gonna watch just to make sure like my energy go down.
I'm sorry, I don't think I got everyone's names when I came in.
I'm Kiaja.
Diaja, nice to meet you. I'm Rizan.
What is it?
Rizan.
And Gloria.
Raven.
To meet you, and
Laila. I think it's two folks channeling in on one Zoom.
Sade, are you there?
Yeah, I think that's Sade and Omi.
Yeah, we're here. Hi.
Thank y'all for channeling in.
Yeah, we really wanted to be there in person, but I nearly burnt our kitchen down, so.
Oh my God. No worries. Thank y'all for your presence. And also too, that actually reminds me, one thing I was thinking of doing, it depends on how y'all feel about it, but I thought it would be cute to have like a cohort announcement on Instagram, like with photos. I think the main thing I'm trying to debate on is whether or not we take pictures together or everyone sends their headshots. So I basically have to think about how much energy I want to put into it. So I'll let y'all know. But I definitely want to include y'all at the minimum on our website on our like team list. So expect that in like the next few weeks, just like a list of the cohort. So that'll be cute. We like a squad, right? We cute. And it's so funny, like I was talking about this with my friend, like I hate the limiting like academic as language that we have to use, but I don't know what else to call it. So for now we a cohort, but we can call it whatever y'all want it to be. But yeah.
My friends and I had a podcast on campus and it was called The Gatekeepers, and we was like basically just like denounce all bigotry that occurred on campus. And it was really messy. It was like 12 a.m. so we was like, let's go. But we want to continue it because like we're all scattered across the US now.
Word.
Do a podcast like virtually. And so one of my missions is like not use any language that I didn't access after high school, because I hate like sometimes I can't even understand my own words. I'm
Yeah.
trying to use this jargon that like, especially my brain for that 3 years.
Yeah,
And so like, I just want to talk like regular, like, and I want my writing to be understood by people that I grew up with and that I talk to on a day-to-day basis, not like fucking professors
yeah.
who don't really care about what I'm writing. So that's like one of my missions is to not use any language, posted it.
I honestly, I appreciate that because that's what inspired me. I be feeling like I have to like have this whatever when I can really just be using Joan however which way I
Like,
want to.
and you know what I mean?
Yes,
Like,
exactly.
and I think I'm trying to learn something new, like a theory, and it's so buzzwords in a sentence, and I have to learn these buzzwords just to understand the whole theory, and I know you can explain it to me.
Right.
In a much more simple for me.
Right, no, absolutely. That's half of the process of understanding somatics was that. Like,
figure.
frustrating, but I hope mine was more accessible than what the people
definitely
article
was.
was. Okay, word. All right, I'm gonna jump off this Zoom thing. Thank y'all for tuning in via interwebs, and I'll see you guys next week.
Yes, Yeah, will, thank yes, you you so will. much.
Okay, cool. Thank y'all. Have a good rest of your night and stuff.
You too, you too. I hope everyone there is doing well too. Yeah.
Yes,
Have a good
I hope your
night.
kids
Okay.
do.
Thanks. Aw, hey, hi. Oh, those are some beautiful faces.
Okay, peace, y'all.